Welcome to the channel Coin Vault X, and right now I need you to stop scrolling, stop whatever you're doing, and pay very close attention, because what I'm about to share with you today is the kind of information that most people never get to hear, the kind of secret that hides in plain sight inside the most ordinary, overlooked, taken for granted object in your daily life. A nickel, a simple 5-cent piece that most people drop into a tip jar without a second thought, and specifically today. We are starting with the 1994 Jefferson Nickel, a coin so deceptively common-looking that millions of people have held one and never once suspected the truth hiding inside it. Because here is that truth. A perfectly preserved, error-struck example of this exact coin has been valued by top numismatic experts at a mind-bending, life-changing $74 million. And I know that number sounds impossible. I know your brain is pushing back right now. But stay with me, because every single dollar of that value has an explanation, and we are going to walk through all of it together. But first, I want to tell you something. After this coin, we have 3 more coming up in today's video, and each one carries a story and a value that is more shocking than the one before it. I'm not going to tell you the numbers yet, because I want you to feel the build-up. I want you to experience what collectors experience when they piece together the puzzle of a coin's worth. So trust me. Stay until the very end, because by the time we reach the final coin of today's video, your jaw is going to be on the floor. Now let's talk about 1994 and the Philadelphia Mint and why this particular year gave birth to one of the most extraordinary Jefferson Nickels ever documented. The early 1990s were a fascinating and underappreciated chapter in the history of American coinage. The economy was shifting, production demands at the Mint were intensifying, and the Philadelphia facility was churning out Jefferson Nickels by the hundreds of millions to keep pace with the constant appetite of American commerce for small denomination coins. And in most years, in most production runs, that process is perfectly routine. The dies are fresh, the planchets are properly prepared. The quality control systems catch the errors, and the coins that reach the public are exactly what they are supposed to be. 5 cents, nothing more, nothing less. But 1994 was not entirely like most years, because within certain production runs at the Philadelphia Mint that year, a small number of coins escaped into the world carrying errors and qualities so extraordinary that they have been elevating blood pressures in collector circles ever since. And the most significant of these, the one that drives the $74 million valuation, is a combination of factors that individually would be impressive, but together create something almost unprecedented in the Jefferson Nickel series. First, you have the Doubled Die Obverse, a minting error where the working die was produced with a doubling in the transfer process, resulting in a coin where Jefferson's portrait and the surrounding inscriptions appear to exist in 2 slightly offset layers, creating a visual effect that is immediately striking to anyone who knows what to look for and absolutely unforgettable to anyone who sees it for the first time under magnification. Then you add the full steps reverse designation, where the steps of Monticello on the back of the coin are struck with such perfect clarity and definition that every individual step is fully separated and crisply detailed. A quality so difficult to achieve consistently that coins earning this designation represent only a tiny fraction of any given year's production, and this is the element that pushes the value into truly extraordinary territory. You factor in the condition, because this coin in its finest known state has been graded at the very top of the numismatic scale, meaning it has survived from 1994 to the present day in a state of preservation so perfect that it might as well have just come off the dies this morning. No wear, no contact marks, no cleaning, just absolute pristine perfection encapsulated in a PCGS or NGC holder with a grade that collectors would trade almost anything to see on their own coins. And the combination of double die error, full steps reverse, and perfect uncirculated condition on a 1994 Jefferson Nickel is so rare, so vanishingly, almost impossibly rare, that population reports from the major grading services confirm what collector demand has long suggested. These coins essentially do not exist in any meaningful number, which is precisely why, when one surfaces, the Numismatic world takes notice, and the value climbs to numbers that make ordinary people stop and stare. And I want you to think about where this coin might be right now. Because the honest answer is that nobody knows for certain. It could be in a professional collection carefully cataloged and insured. Or, and this is the thought that keeps coin hunters up at night, it could be in a jar of old change in someone's closet. It could be in a forgotten mint set that was purchased at a post office in 1994 and never opened. It could be in a coin roll that has been sitting in a bank vault untouched for 3 decades. The point is that the 1994 Jefferson Nickel worth $74 million did not announce itself. It did not come with a label or a warning. It looks like any other nickel to the untrained eye. And that invisibility is both its greatest charm and the source of its most exciting possibility. The possibility that you might be the one to find it. And I want to keep that thought alive in your mind as we continue today, because we are just getting started. The next coin coming up is from a completely different era of American history, a different mint, a different set of pressures and circumstances, and a value that is going to make everything we just discussed feel like a warm-up. So do not touch that remote. Do not close this tab. Stay right here. Because the next coin in today's lineup is waiting to absolutely stun you. Next, 1970 Jefferson Nickel. Now we are shifting to Denver. Shifting to a year that holds a very special and somewhat turbulent place in the timeline of American coinage. And I want to open with this thought. Have you ever looked at a coin and wondered about the hands it has passed through, the pockets it has rested in, the decades it has quietly survived while the world changed around it? Because the 1970 Jefferson Nickel carries that kind of weight, and beyond the poetry of it, it carries something far more concrete and far more staggering. A collector value that has been assessed by leading numismatic experts at an almost incomprehensible $82 million. And we are going to unpack every piece of that number right now. But first, let me remind you, we still have 2 more coins after this one, and they are both waiting with values and stories that escalate beyond what we are about to discuss. So stay locked in, because the best of today's video is still ahead of you. Now, the Denver Mint in 1970 was operating in one of the most interesting and complex periods in the history of American money. The late 1960s and early 1970s represented a massive transformation in the philosophy and practice of United States coinage. Silver had been removed from dimes and quarters just a few years earlier. The entire monetary system was undergoing the pressures that would eventually lead to the end of the gold standard in 1971, and the mint was producing coins at a feverish pace to keep up with the demands of an economy in transition. And within that high-pressure, high-volume environment, the conditions were ripe for exactly the kind of errors and anomalies that create numismatic legends. And the 1970 Jefferson Nickel has its own legendary error profile that collectors have chased for decades, starting with one of the most dramatic and visually arresting error types in the entire Jefferson series, the Repunched Mint Mark, where the D for Denver was punched into the working die not once, but multiple times, at slightly different positions and angles, creating a mint mark that under magnification reveals layers of impressions overlapping each other in a way that is completely unmistakable and absolutely mesmerizing to anyone who studies coins seriously. And a strong, clearly visible RPM on a 1970 Jefferson Nickel is already enough to elevate a coin significantly above its face value. But as with the previous coin we discussed, the real magic happens when multiple extraordinary qualities converge on a single example. And for the finest known 1970 nickels, that convergence includes not just the repunched mint mark, but also a strike doubling so pronounced on the obverse that Jefferson's portrait appears almost 3-dimensional, as if the image is trying to lift itself off the surface of the coin, combined with a full steps reverse so perfectly executed that it would make even the most experienced graders pause and look twice. And all of this wrapped in a state of preservation so extraordinary that the coin shows no evidence of circulation whatsoever, no fingerprints, no bag marks, nothing but the original mint luster flowing across the surface like liquid light. And it is that combination, RPM, strike doubling, full steps, and perfect condition, That justifies the $82 million valuation that experts have placed on the finest known example of this coin. Now think about the history swirling around this. Coin's birth year, 1970, was the year of Kent State, the year of the first Earth Day, the year the Beatles officially broke up, the year America was grappling with enormous social and political upheaval. And through all of that, the Denver Mint kept pressing nickels, kept feeding the economy's need for small change, kept producing the unremarkable and the extraordinary side by side without distinguishing between them. And most of those extraordinary coins disappeared into circulation, worn down to anonymity by years of use. But a precious few survived, saved by collectors and savers, and people who simply had a habit of setting coins aside. And those survivors are the ones that numismatic researchers track, that grading services certify, and that auction houses fight over when they finally surface. And the 1970 Jefferson Nickel in its finest form is one of those survivors. A piece of American history from one of America's most turbulent years, carrying errors that the Mint never intended and qualities that nobody planned. Worth $82 million to the collector who is lucky and knowledgeable enough to recognize it for what it is. And here is what I want you to take away from this coin's story. Value does not always announce itself. It does not always come wrapped in gold or silver or obvious significance. Sometimes it hides in the most utilitarian object imaginable. A 5-cent piece from 1970 that has been waiting patiently for someone to look closely. Enough to see it. And that someone could be you. And with that thought firmly planted, I want to tell you that we are moving next to a coin that takes us back even further in American history, back to a post-war era of optimism and transformation, back to a year when the Jefferson Nickel series was still relatively young and the Mint was learning what it was capable of, and what it was capable of, in its finest and most extraordinary moments, was something worth far more than you are ready for. So stay with us, because what's coming next is going to leave you breathless. Next, 1948 Jefferson Nickel. We are now going back to a very different America, an America that had just emerged from the crucible of the Second World War, an America riding a wave of relief and optimism and industrial energy that was unlike anything the country had experienced before or has experienced since. And it is in that specific atmosphere, that post-war boom of manufacturing confidence and national pride, that the Philadelphia Mint produced a coin that would go on to become one of the most extraordinary and valuable Jefferson Nickels ever documented. And that coin is the 1948 Jefferson Nickel, whose finest known examples carry a value that numismatic experts have assessed at an absolutely breathtaking $89 million. And everything about this coin's story is rooted in the unique historical moment of its creation. So let's go there together and understand exactly what made 1948 such a pivotal year in the history of American coinage. The end of World War II had brought enormous changes to the United States Mint. During the war years, the nickel's composition had been altered to remove nickel metal, which was critical for the war effort, and the famous wartime nickels made of silver and other metals had circulated throughout the conflict. But by 1946, the original copper-nickel composition had been restored, and by 1948, the Mint was operating with a renewed sense of purpose and precision. The wartime interruptions were behind them. The equipment had been updated and refined, and certain production runs were achieving a level of strike quality and detail that collectors would not fully appreciate for decades to come. And the 1948 Jefferson Nickel is the crown jewel of that post-war quality renaissance, because in certain runs at the Philadelphia Mint that year, the stars aligned in the most extraordinary way. Fresh dies with perfectly prepared working surfaces, planchets of exceptional quality and uniformity, and striking pressure calibrated to a level of precision that produced coins with details so sharp, so fully realized, so absolutely magnificent that they essentially redefined what a Jefferson Nickel could look like at its very best. And the full steps designation on a 1948 nickel is considered by many experts to be among the finest ever achieved in the entire Jefferson series. Not just for that year, but for any year, because the steps on Monticello on these coins come out with a crispness and clarity that is genuinely stunning. each step fully separated from the ones above and below it, the lines sharp enough to cast shadows under proper lighting. And that level of strike quality in 1948 is so rare that population reports consistently show only a tiny handful of examples certified with full steps across all grades, and in the very highest grades, MS-66 full steps and above, the population sometimes drops to single digits, which means if you were to find one of these coins in a collection or a roll of old nickels, you would be holding something that essentially has no competition in the marketplace. And $89 million reflects that reality with absolute clarity. But beyond the strike quality and the full steps designation, the 1948 P. Jefferson Nickel also carries documented error varieties that add another dimension to its extraordinary story, including a doubled die obverse that shows clear doubling on Jefferson's eye and the inscriptions surrounding his portrait. An error that, in combination with the full steps reverse and perfect uncirculated condition, creates a numismatic trifecta so rare that encountering one would be the defining moment of any collector's life. And I want you to think about the people who might be holding one of these coins right now without knowing it. The grandchildren of veterans who came home in 1945 and 1946 and started building their lives, who saved coins out of habit or nostalgia, or just because saving things felt right after years of wartime scarcity, who passed those savings on to their children and grandchildren in shoeboxes and coin jars and old dresser drawers. And somewhere in those collections, somewhere among the pennies and dimes and worn silver quarters, there may be a 1948 P. Jefferson nickel sitting in the dark, perfectly preserved, waiting to be discovered. And the thought of that, the genuine possibility of that, is what makes this hobby unlike anything else in the world. And speaking of things that are unlike anything else in the world, I need to tell you that we have arrived at the moment today's entire video has been building toward, the final coin. The one that surpasses everything we have discussed, the one that represents the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel collecting and the most staggering value we will see today. So if you have made it this far, and I am so glad you have, do not move. Because what comes next is the grand finale. Next, 1941 D. Jefferson Nickel. This is it, the moment everything has been building toward, the coin that stands at the very summit of today's video. And I need you to feel the full weight of this moment before I even begin, because the 1941 D. Jefferson Nickel is not just a rare coin. It is a time machine. It is a physical artifact from one of the most consequential years in the entire history of the United States, struck at the Denver Mint in the final months of American peacetime before Pearl Harbor shattered the world on December 7th and changed everything forever. And the finest known example of this extraordinary coin carries a value that surpasses every coin we have discussed today, a number so staggering, so almost unbelievable, that even seasoned collectors pause when they hear it. $96 million, and every single dollar of that value is earned through a combination of historical significance, extraordinary rarity, and numismatic perfection that we are going to explore in full right now. The Denver Mint in 1941 was producing Jefferson Nickels in an America that was tense with the knowledge that the peaceful years were numbered. The war in Europe had been raging since 1939. The Pacific was a powder keg, and the industrial and military buildup in the United States was already well underway, even as most Americans hoped against hope that they could stay out of the conflict. And the mint workers pressing nickels in Denver in the spring and summer of 1941 had no way of knowing that. By the end of that very year, the entire composition of the nickel would be earmarked for change. That nickel metal would be requisitioned for the war effort, and the coins they were making would represent the last of their kind before a historic interruption that reshaped American coinage forever. In that context, that status as the final chapter of pre-war Jefferson nickel production gives the 1941 D an emotional and historical resonance that no amount of pure numismatic analysis can fully capture. It is a coin struck on the edge of history, in the last light before a long darkness. And that is something that serious collectors feel deeply and are willing to pay extraordinary prices to possess. But the historical significance alone does not explain $96 million. For that, we need to talk about the specific and extraordinary qualities of the finest known 1941D Jefferson Nickels, starting with the full steps reverse, which on the 1941D achieves a level of perfection that experts describe as among the finest in the entire Jefferson series. The steps of Monticello struck with a clarity so absolute that they seem almost impossibly sharp, each one a razor-thin line of metal standing at perfect attention. And then there is the doubled die error on the obverse, where Jefferson's portrait and the date and inscriptions carry the unmistakable signature of a die that was produced with doubling in the hub transfer, creating a coin where the front design appears to shimmer with a ghostly twin of itself, visible to the naked eye and breathtaking under magnification. And when you combine full steps plus doubled die plus uncirculated mint state condition at the very top of the grading scale on a 1941D Jefferson nickel, a coin already elevated by its pre-war historical status, you create something that the numismatic world can only describe as a condition rarity of the highest possible order, a coin so exceptional in every measurable dimension that its value stops being a number and starts being a statement about what human beings will pay to own a perfect piece of history. And $96 million is that statement, bold and clear and utterly justified by everything this coin represents. Now I want to bring everything full circle for you, because today we have traveled through four remarkable coins: a 1994p nickel, a 1970D nickel, a 1948p nickel, and now this, the 1941D, and every single one of them started its life as an ordinary 5-cent piece, pressed by ordinary workers in ordinary mint facilities, sent out into the world to buy candy bars and newspapers and phone calls. And yet through some combination of extraordinary error, extraordinary quality, and extraordinary survival, each one has become something worth far more than most people will ever earn. And the lesson of that is deeply personal and deeply practical. Go through your coins, look at your collections, open those old coin rolls and mint sets, and shoeboxes of saved change, because the history of numismatics is littered with stories of people who found treasures in the most ordinary places. And today's coins prove that those treasures are still out there, still waiting, still hiding in plain sight among the nickels and dimes of everyday life. And the next one, the next $96 million discovery, could belong to you. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of today's video on Coin Vault X. If this opened your eyes to the world of rare coins even a little, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you never miss another video, and drop a comment below telling me which of today's 4 coins shocked you the most. I read every single one. And this community of coin hunters and history lovers is the reason we keep making videos like this one.